Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots?
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure.
Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I call it John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
Can't hear you, Bobby.
You're muted,
Bobby.
Let's do it again. Hey, Bobby Manning here. Celtics lose to the Cavs on Sunday night here, front end of a back-to-back. Without Jaylen Brown, without Derek White, who missed a second game here with that foot injury after suffering it on Friday and not returning to that game. So a short-handed effort here in an important game. Pretty telling that the Celtics, despite the back-to-back tomorrow, went with both Porzingis and Horford in this one. So it's going to be potentially even more of a short-handed effort tomorrow against Miami. But they are unable to steal this game, despite going up by 12 in the second half. A pretty good Tatum game. We can nitpick a little bit there. And obviously late after Donovan Mitchell scored, I think, 11 straight points to flip the lead in the fourth quarter there. I think he scored 19, Noah, in the fourth, I want to say. At least.
Sounds about right.
He's probably stacked up some more free throws or whatever, but Cavs impressive again here, and Celtics shorthanded, but Joe Mazzulla saying before the game, we expect to win no matter who's out there. We expect to compete. They certainly competed in this game, but a few defensive lapses, some lineup mixing and matching in this game, and some key misses late by Tatum around the basket ended up killing in this one. Welcome in, Sherrod. Welcome in, Noa Dalzell. Sherrod, where are you going first with this one? What's on your mind coming out of it?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, for Celtics fans, the sky is not falling. The team is not doomed for a Philadelphia Sixers exile or anything like that. There was a loss. There's no question about it that Cleveland played a better game. But there were certain things that I was looking for that had absolutely little, if anything, to do with the final score and everything to do with what's going to happen if these two teams meet in the playoffs. I was really looking to see how they dealt with Porzingis, and more specifically, how Porzingis dealt with them. Evan Mobley, I thought, made a very conscious effort to go at Porzingis, put his shoulder in his chest and things like that. And then I look at his final numbers, 4 for 13. And even though Jared Allen, was like, I think 4 for 6, he was a non-factor for the most part. And I think his plus minus for the game was like -5 or something like that. So to me, I was looking to see what would the new addition to the Celtics lineup, Porzingis, how is that going to change the dynamics of things? And obviously without Derek White, without Jaylen Brown, not just two of your better scorers, but two of the 5 guys that you typically throw out there on Donovan Mitchell, who is a load. I mean, there was at one point on the broadcast they mentioned Donovan Mitchell came in, I think, having played in 17 games against the Celtics, and only one player in NBA history has a higher scoring average against him, and that's some guy named Michael Jordan. So him going on for 35, not that big a shock. The fact that the Celtics didn't have at least 2 of their better defenders to at least slow him down, because I don't think Donovan is a guy that the Celtics are ever going to shut down, but they can make his job harder than it is. And I think down the stretch, not having those 2 guys specifically really hurt them, because as you look around the guys around Donovan Mitchell, and you guys, we've seen this movie before in the playoffs. As much as the entree or the main dish is the guy you watch, the side guys, the guys around them, often dictate teams going beyond, around, going and so on and so forth. And I just don't think Donovan's supporting cast has shown the ability to elevate when they need it. Garland was better. He was definitely better, but he wasn't great. He wasn't special. He didn't put up in, and basically Pritchard neutralized Garland's contributions. And that's your 6th man right there. So disappointed, obviously they didn't win, but I'm not just devastated by this loss at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, because the lineups were in flux in this game, obviously, and I know Jaylen probably went out pretty late today in terms of their expectations for what the rotation was going to be in this game. But they go double big, obviously. They stay double big into that second unit, and I feel like that threw things off from the start there, and this was just an offensive dud for the most part this game. The defense wasn't great either, especially late. But offensively, they went on some massive scoring droughts in this game, Noah, that aren't typical of them, given their consistency on that end, the shooting, all the rest. And they found some looks throughout the flow of the game that got them going a little bit. And Tatum had some great scoring stretches in this game to carry them, but that wasn't enough here. And, this would have been the Drew Peterson show, right? If they won, ended up being a creative move to try to spark some stuff. But it ultimately wasn't able to save them being down maybe 2 of their 4 most, important offensive engines on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is a couple things. One, the ball movement and just their offense didn't look great throughout the night. Even times where Tatum had, willed in some great shots, or Porzingis bailed them out, or Pritchard had some great moves. As a team, the ball movement was poor, and I think you can attribute a lot of that to not having their usual group out there. But also there's sometimes moments where you're like, just run anything, literally run anything other than just standing around and watching the clock go down. And that's just, I don't think it's exclusive to the Celtics. I think sometimes just watching NBA teams, it sometimes feels like just do anything other than what you're doing right now, which is just dribbling down the clock, which we saw a lot of today. Even so, they were in position to win this game. And I think down the stretch, the Cavs just went and took it. Like Donovan Mitchell didn't miss a shot down the stretch. They went 10 for 10 from the free throw line. So in a way, as much as the Celtics performance was frustrating, they did enough. They actually did enough to win this game. And I think that most times that would result in a win, what they did tonight, despite the fact that it was definitely not a perfect game by any means. And that's what's encouraging, is that they were able to be in that position. I think a couple things go differently down the stretch there. We're talking about how did they pull off this win against the best team in the NBA, or the best record in the NBA, without 2 of their key players. So I actually do think it was a pretty encouraging game in a lot of ways. I think the Cavs are legit in the sense of, they're, 17-3 now, 18-3. So like they've found ways to win games that were out of reach when they were down by double digits. They've been down by double digits so many times this season. Every time I check League Pass, they're down by double digits and they come back and win. And so, yeah, I think that the absences we're missing, Derek White in particular, I think they are not the same without him over the past 2 seasons. He is the one guy that when he misses the game, when he misses a game, they actually lose a lot of the time. They're 6-4 without him in the last 2 years. Whereas every other rotation player, you take him out and it's like their record is impeccable still. So there is something there. But there's a lot to talk about in this game. I was excited for this show because I think it was just a very different type of game than we've seen. It's not just another, the starting 5 maybe messed around a little bit. Maybe they won, maybe they lost. But there was a lot of interesting dynamics at play.
Yeah, and please, Cavs fans out there who want to get into troll mode, do not compare not having Derek White and Jaylen Brown with not having Max Strus and Dean Wade. The two,
I don't think anybody would.
But they, watching the broadcast, they were making that, the Celtics are down a couple players, and so are the Cavs. And I'm like, this is not apples and apples. We're talking like apples and raisins.
So what I will say is the first game, you throw it back to that one. The Cavs were missing everybody on the wing. So we can split it 2-1 games.
And to me, that's the beautiful thing about this rivalry. Both games were won by a team that had a decisive advantage over the other because of key pieces missing. And for me, that makes when these two meet in the playoffs all the more intriguing, because you don't really know which is the superior team, because we haven't seen either of them play each other at relative full strength. Each of them has been missing or has had a significant piece of their core not available for whatever reasons. And that's why, to me, the fact that both of them have distinguished themselves as the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference, it makes all the more intriguing once these two get into the postseason and they're playing for all the marbles, because that, to me, it's going to be a crapshoot, because both of these teams have shown individually against other teams how great they are, and when they've matched up against each other, they have been able to take advantage of the other team's missing ingredients. So I love watching these two teams play, because both games I think have been really, really good and have really frankly shown a level of coaching and the impact of coaching on winning that I don't think we always see, particularly with Joe Mazzulla and his crew, because more times than not, those guys can kind of roll out of bed and beat teams by 15. And so Joe doesn't get the kind of credit I think he deserves when he's actually really making a difference in terms of the outcome. But this was, like I said, this is a really good game and an interesting game. And to Noah's point, there's so many different things different directions we can go in talking about this game that we have not been able to do with any kind of consistency this year.
Yeah, and I love that, because we haven't had many games that you can get into the nitty-gritty of decisions and coaching and all that stuff, and this was a pretty compelling coaching matchup tonight in terms of the back and forth, especially late. I want to, before we get into that, give a shout-out to our sponsor here, Prize Picks, going into Monday night. There's already a football game going on tonight, but luckily there's always Monday Night Football too. There's football most nights of the week, as well as basketball. Celtics and Heat going at it tomorrow as Boston's stretch continues here. It'll be a big Tatum and Pritchard night. Always love picking more for him on Prize Picks here. The best way to get daily fantasy sports and the most accessible way for fans. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states and the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million users. Head over there and sign up, and you know how it goes. Pick 2 or more players, pick more or less on their stat projections. Steph Curry, for example, you think he's going to get more than 5 3-pointers next week? Giannis more than 30 points. That's been a pretty good prediction this year. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you run your game on Prize Picks. And right now, you can go over there and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup over at Prize Picks. Just use the code CLNS. Prize Picks, go check it out again. So easy, so accessible. Your fantasy football team's in flux. You can make a new team every day over there. Same with basketball. A lot of injuries going on in basketball right now too. And the best part about Prize Picks is you get the injury insurance so your team stays in play over there. So again, CLNS. Play $5, get $50 instantly at Prize Picks. Use that code CLNS to let them know we sent you. So let's get into it. I find a couple coaching decisions interesting here in this game. Stringing out the possessions late, playing the free throw game. I like that one in the end. I didn't like it at first because I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to get a shot off in the end, and they weren't because Pritchard didn't, Scal was on it. He should have went up with that shot when the Cavs were trying to foul him on the last possession there. And then he almost got a, missed free throw off that he grabbed, but it was too early leaving the line. So I think the free throw stuff worked. The Peterson stuff, I'd say a mixed bag. He was great offensively, and they needed that in this game. And I was amazed, Noah, with how ready he was to hit shots, to be aggressive when he got the ball in his hands, to be in the right positions on that end of the floor. But, of course, given him moving up from pretty much exclusive G League play over the last couple of years here to NBA action against the best team in the East, Cavs were able to go at him a little bit. He fouled. He made that, ill-advised foul from behind there on one of the plays. So, I'd say a mixed bag here. It definitely helped you in this game. But I am sitting there when he goes in the game saying, you're not going to try Shireman here after picking him in the first round. They're seeing some positive returns from him in his G League stints. I'm not going to go crazy about that because I think Peterson was solid in this game, surprisingly so. But that one, to me, I was like, ooh, where'd that come from?
I mean, when I saw Drew Peterson in the game, I thought I wasn't seeing right. So I truly, the last thing I expected is Drew Peterson to play. What did he finish with?
He played the whole second quarter.
25 minutes.
And,
25 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's wild. So I didn't expect it. He hasn't been outstanding in Maine the way that I personally think the two standouts for Maine so far this season have been J.D. Davison and Baylor Shireman. But at the same time, I'm looking at this from a big picture thing. And I don't think Joe Mazzulla put him in the game because he felt like he was the only guy that could give them something tonight. I think you're thinking about it. This is his second consecutive year on a 2-way deal in Boston. This is a big-time game. This is an opportunity for him to play some big-time minutes that are relatively not actually that consequential. At the end of the day, he could have gone in that second quarter stint, and had things not gone well,
do you think that was planned?
5 minutes. I don't think the 25 minutes were planned, but I think giving him today a chance to really get an opportunity, I think it was. Whether he knew about it, I don't know. But Jordan Walsh got his opportunity early in the season. He had several games, several extended stints. We can debate how much he capitalized on the opportunity, but he got it. Cade has had his opportunity. Everybody's had their opportunity. And this is a guy that really hasn't since he signed the 2-way with Boston, about a year ago. It was last December. And so you gave him a chance now. And now you know what you can get from him in an NBA game. And I think looking at the big picture is probably more what was at play here than just, he can give you a 3-pointer, because there were moments where I was like, you could have just not played him at all. You could have not even played anybody those extra minutes. Sam Hauser could have gone, I guess he played 36. A guy like Jaden Springer, has been with Boston too. He didn't get there's something there that I think they wanted.
You got in the game tonight?
7
at the very end.
Yeah. So that was my take on it. I liked what I saw. I don't know that he, I don't think he blew the minutes away, but he also played really hard. He got some good defensive plays. He made some mistakes, which is to be expected. But I like the approach. I like that he got that opportunity. And I would actually love to hear what Joe Mazzulla was actually thinking here. I know that I'm sure post-game he'll get asked about it. And I'm sure he won't say too much, but I'd be very curious to know what the real calculus was.
No, I think this was a long game thing, Sherrod, or was this just we need a spark?
I think it was. I think this was one of those games where Joe Mazzulla realized that they were playing with house money. Give this guy a shot to get out there, and maybe he's got something in him that we have not taken advantage of. Give him an opportunity to play his way into a meaningful role. Because I don't think Drew Peterson, up to this point, since his time with the Celtics, has really had much of an opportunity to showcase what he can do. And when the thing about Joe Mazzulla that I'm starting to kind of get a better sense of is that when he has guys out with injuries or illnesses, or whatever case may be, there's probably going to be someone who is going to get an opportunity that is either going to be greater than what they normally get, or will be just someone who just doesn't play. We saw that with Jordan Walsh earlier this year. We saw that with Drew Peterson today. Sam Hauser played way more minutes than I think Sam would even thought he would have played, even with Jalen out. And so I think, to your question, Bobby, I do think that there's a long-term thought process involved with this because when Porzingis was out and we're seeing, is it Keita? Is it Luke? Is it Keita, Luke? Both of those guys were playing minutes. And I do think that part of Joe Mazzulla's thinking is that at some point I might need them in the game 4 of the first round of the playoffs when we have a chance to close out a team. And I want to make sure that they're at least comfortable being on the floor in a relatively high pressure type situation. There's no question in my mind right now that if the Celtics are in a situation where Jaylen Brown is sick and maybe Sam Hauser's in foul trouble and they're game 3 of a best of 7 in the conference semifinals, there will be no hesitation in Joe Mazzulla's mind to put Peterson out there because he knows that when I put him in big games, he hasn't shrunk in the moment. And to me, that's the bigger concern. Not so much guys elevating their play, but do they shrink in the moment? And we see that happen a lot with young guys when they get that first or second crack at playing. And we didn't see that with Drew Peterson. I thought that was amazing. I thought his plus minus was indicative of what he gave you. He was 0. He didn't hurt you. He didn't help you per se. He simply did his job, and you were no worse or better off when he came into the game than when he left the game. And he did some nice things out there. So to me, I like the fact that he got an opportunity to play. And I think of the options that Joe Mazzulla would have thought about, I probably would have given Springer a shot a little bit earlier than just those 7 seconds, just because I thought you needed another body on Donovan, to be honest with you. Someone who not obviously can lock him up because that's not happening, but just someone with a different kind of athleticism that would give Donovan a different look defensively. I thought they needed another body like that because Drew wasn't, I think, handling that particularly well. Tatum wasn't any better. Sam Hauser wasn't any better. Although I did like a lot of what I saw out of Sam defensively. I thought they really tried to go at him and Sam more times than not, either fouled them, which was smart because you get 6 of them, you might as well use them, or he did a good job of forcing him to take contested shots. So this was like I said, this was a house money type game for the Celtics. If they were able to pull this out, it's a great win because you're down 2 starters. But if you don't, you've got film of what your guy Porzingis can do and what they try to do against him with their 2 bigs. And you gave a guy that probably isn't going to play much for the rest of the season a chance to see what does he do when he's put on the floor in a big game on the road type situation. And I thought Drew Peterson handled himself adequately in this game.
Yeah, I have no problem with how he handled it. And go ahead, Noah.
No, I'll just add, before this game, he had played a total of 30 NBA minutes. So he nearly doubled his output of NBA minutes, excluding preseason, in one night. And so that experience is invaluable. I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of film to work with him on. And again, to bring back a 2-way, I think he's not somebody that has been really intriguing to people. I know because I can see page views on my articles and I've written about him and nobody clicks. So I know that he's not a guy that
I'm not sure people even know who he is yet.
Yeah. And so, but guys like, I think JD Davis and people are more, because he wasn't drafted by the organization. So it's like, not only he wasn't drafted, but he's also not super intriguing to people. So in that sense, I think he was able to kind of introduce himself a little bit. But again, I've asked Joe Mazzulla this question a couple of times about playing different guys down the stretch. And he never shares too much, but what he does always say is, if they're out there, I trust them. And I think this was his way of saying, I trust Drew Peterson right now. And I don't think that he trusts Jaden Springer because he hasn't played him at all this year. And we don't see 90
for offense. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, but even so, I would have loved to see
spacing.
Jaden Springer just for the last minute when you needed a steal because you just kept fouling back and forth. I was like, let's put the guy that maybe could get a steal here. That's what I was thinking. Not even during the run of the game, but yeah,
I was gonna go there next. I didn't love it in the moment, stringing out those 20 seconds, fouling 5 times. Would they hit 10 straight, Noah, or 8 over that 20 seconds that they strung out at the end of the game there?
Mm-hmm.
They were fouling Garland, a great free throw shooter. I think Mitchell was up there at one point. I get the thinking, and it worked out because they got the ball with 5 seconds left. They had one timeout, which probably went back to the challenge that they weren't able to, win a couple minutes earlier in the fourth. So you have one timeout. You're trying to manage that. You have to get a 3 off probably at some point. I will say really impressive going from free throws up the court into a Pritchard 3 cleanly off a couple dribbles during that sequence to actually be in position to play it out with fouls there. But I do think, let's say after the Cavs hit 6 straight free throws, I probably would have called a timeout there and just set up a 3 because the Cavs were following you back every time, Sherrod, and sending you to the free throw line. And then obviously, I think with 5 seconds left, you were able to get the ball to Pritchard and Scal screaming, go up, go up. And maybe you get fouled there on a 3, maybe you don't. But I think at some point when that following game stopped working, you had to set up a play where you could get a 3 off clean and try to tie the game there. And Celtics were obviously never able to do that.
I mean, Scal was on point as far as pointing out when Pritchard had the ball in the corner, and it was well within his range, and he was just waiting to get fouled. And I'm thinking, no, you shoot. This is when you shoot because they're going to try to foul you, and if you get a shot off, it's either going to get blocked and go out of bounds, so then you just inbound it, or you get fouled with a chance to tie the game up. And I thought it was one of those moments where Pritchard's. He's had such a great season, but I just thought that was one of those moments where I know the coach has told you that you're probably going to get fouled, but damn it, have a clear, decisive offensive mindset and just let it fly. And let's be honest, who would you want taking that shot in that moment more than Peyton Pritchard?
Right.
There's no other Celtic you'd want to do that. So I thought that was a missed opportunity there when they were playing the fouling game. And Kenny Atkins, I mean, that's the smart thing to do. Even though Cleveland has a very good defense, Kenny Atkinson has been around the game long enough to know that you don't play with that kind of fire.
You got to foul. So many
foul.
teams have not done it and given up a 3 there.
And right. And so that to me, it was just a good coaching move on his part. And I would have probably, if I were Joe Mazzulla, I might have reached into the Brad Stevens book of plays where, you'll just do a misdirection. Like you'll have Pritchard right in front of the inbounder and just have Drew Peterson or someone, and set a mid screen and just have them flare out on the opposite side for a 3-pointer. We've seen that play before and it does work. I probably would have tried something like that, particularly when it was about 5 seconds to go. Because at that point, Cleveland is very comfortable following you. They're in that rhythm, and you need to do something to disrupt that. And I thought, to your point, Bobby, running some type of action where, to me, you're not going to get a clean 3-point shot right in front of where you're inbounded ball. You're going to have to get some misdirection going to the opposite side of the floor, which again, I think with the kind of length that the Celtics have with Tatum, Drew Peterson, Al Horford, Porzingis, you could have ran some action that would have caused some confusion for Cleveland and put you in position, I think, to get a decent look at a 3, which is what you want at that point. Because like you said, there's a point in that whole back and forth free throw thing where you got to do something to just disrupt the flow. Because they weren't missing free throws at all. I think it was 10 for 10 down the stretch.
10, yeah.
So you got to do something to disrupt that.
What would you have done there, Noah? You think they played it right?
Yeah, I mean, I think usually teams don't go 10 for 10. I mean, this is not either team's fault. I think you got to change that rule as an NBA. And I know that I sound like petty saying that now because the Celtics lost, but I feel this way all the time, that there has to be some way to prevent the game from devolving into that down the stretch, because you're taking away the potential for really great shots, like game tying shots, and you're dragging out. That was like 18 minutes of play, the last 35 seconds. So it's besides the point. It's not going to change. But I actually have been thinking about this for a long time, and tonight was a perfect example of like how frustrating that is when a team is down 3 and you don't actually have to guard because you can just foul. And they did it great, and you could see the veteran experience in that team. They stuck to the game plan, and the Celtics really didn't challenge them. I think someone like Jalen's had a few marquee plays in recent years where he's actually gotten the steal. Thinking back to the Pacers
they did
game.
Force a timeout.
They forced one timeout, and they forced one like awkward lob pass to Niang. But outside of that, every single play was crisp to the guy they wanted to get it to. Really not a lot of misdirection or pressure or anything. So yeah, I think if you're Boston, you got to try something else. I feel like you maybe could have rolled out a lineup that had a little bit more personnel, like Springer. I mean, it's a little bit reputational with him at this point. This idea that he can force steals and is a ball hawk, because we really haven't seen it in Boston. But I would have loved to give him that chance if we're in the business of giving guys opportunities tonight. That would have been fun to see him a little bit more extended. But ultimately, this is the way the game goes. If if the team hits 10 of 10 free throws and the Celtics put themselves in that position, like that's just the way that it's going to go. Unless the rules change, which I'm a proponent of. I was watching the game with my dad. We were debating all the different possibilities. I think there's a couple of different ways you could go, but it's probably not going to happen.
Well, I tell you what, Noah, because you got me thinking about rule changes, and specifically about that end of game. Here's what I propose. We'll just call this the Noah rule of play. After the 8th foul, teams get 1 free throw and possession of the ball. So once you go into the bonus, you start doing the intentional fouling stuff. After you commit that 8th foul, that team that is fouled gets a free throw, but they also keep possession of the ball. That will be a deterrent for teams to do this, all that.
It's like
fouling.
An intentional foul rule.
Yeah, you just, because to me, it just, the fact that 30 seconds of play all of a sudden becomes 5 additional minutes of game time is insane. You're dragging it out way longer than it needs to be. And, this is something that we've seen teams do this. We've seen the Celtics benefit from this. And I kind of thought it sucked. We've seen the Celtics on the short end of it, and it still sucks. It just makes the game so much longer than it needs to be. And the NBA has shown a willingness and desire to speed up play. Tweaking that end of game rule a little bit, I think, is one way to do that. I would love to see teams actually have to defend down the stretch. I mean, what an amazing concept that would be. You actually have to win a game by actually defending in the closing seconds of play. Damn.
I also just think a game-tying 3-point shot is like one of the most exciting plays in basketball. And effectively, if you're a smart, well-coached team, you would be eliminating those. And the Celtics have benefited from that more than it's hurt them. So, yeah, that's, it's not the rule is the rule, but it was definitely not it was a great game. And I thought the last stretch was a little bit underwhelming, but also very impressive because it's hard to hit that many free throws. And Donovan Mitchell went to the line 1 of 4 from the line for the night. And I wasn't surprised that he made all of them because at that point he was in such a good groove, but most NBA teams are not going to go 10 of 10. That we've seen that enough to know that.
Right. And at the end of the day, you got to give Cleveland their props. They won this game. They were the better team. They did all the things that you're supposed to do down the stretch to win the game. They made their free throws. They got their stops. One play, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it later, but, that when Donovan put them up, I think it was 103-101, and Tatum came right back, had the layup, had Garland beat, and missed. He just missed the layup. And the broadcast were talking about, Garland, showing some physicality, holding his own against Tatum. No, Tatum missed the bunny. He just missed the damn bunny. There was nothing that Garland did that should have prevented Tatum from finishing that shot at the rim.
I want to get to Tatum. I will say I like the Elam ending for the end of game stuff. I don't know if that could ever get to the NBA, but G League maybe. And they did in the All-Star game, obviously. And then you got to get a shot off there late at some point. And at some point you had to draw it up, and they had a chance to there. And I'm not going to put that on Mazzulla. I think that was on Pritchard there, not being able to get a shot off there with about 5 seconds left. I want to get to
because you knew he was the guy that was going to have the ball. You knew he was going to have the ball. And at that point, if you know you're going to have the ball, you either design something or you come up with something as an individual that's going to free you up, or use that attention that you're getting to get someone else a good look. There should have been some type of plan A, plan B, plan C, in those last 5 seconds, where Pritchard is your first option. And if that's not right there, knowing they're going to foul, do some action that's going to free someone else up so that Pritchard can make a play or someone else can make a play to give you a 3-point shot. Because you're too good a team and you love the 3-point shot too much to not get one off in those closing seconds.
Not seeing any quotes, Noah. I don't know if you are, but out of Miami tonight where the Heat played, Jimmy Butler tweaked his knee. So he's going to get looked at ahead of tomorrow. So good Butlerless Heat team coming to Boston tomorrow. Anything on the Celtics side?
Yeah, I just saw, so Joe was talking about the Drew Peterson matchup. I can read, or the Drew Peterson decision. I can read the quote. Do you guys want? I thought he had some really good defensive possessions, defending without fouling. He was physical. He's smart. He has a knack for the ball, whether it's offensive rebounding or moving without the basketball to get open. And I think he works really hard. So you try to find moments throughout the season to where you can validate the work the guys put in, regardless of who it is. Jordan, Drew, Jaden, JD, those guys. I just felt like he's had really good reps lately, and I thought he put us in a position for us to win tonight. I think he's had really good reps lately is the key line there. Like, I think he's just impressed them recently, and they were thinking to themselves, like, we're going to need to go with somebody who's really impressed recently. I think Drew Peterson's really impressed. Not necessarily like his skill set is the best fit for Cleveland. Maybe that's partially true, but that was what I was thinking, and so I'm going to hang on to that line.
Yeah. I guess it made sense.
We got you on record, Joe. We got you on record.
I know. I love that he said something on record.
I will say, though, if he fouled anymore, he would have fouled out of the game.
Look, so, man, you get 6 of them every game. I do not understand why more.
So I just wouldn't say he defended without fouling. That's yeah.
He had a few possessions where he defended and he didn't pick up a foul.
Right.
I see. I can understand, Bobby, why we were each drawn to a different line in that quote.
Right.
I didn't even process that line about the fouling. You're right. He did say that too.
Yeah.
No, but he was good. And again, I'm not going to go overboard with the praise of the game because, I think it was an okay game. Good on offense, not as good on defense. But I want to circle back to that later too. But I want to tell everybody about game time real quick. Amazing experience over at Game Time. And there's obviously many games this week at TD Garden. Will you see Peterson? Will you see Davison? There's going to be a lot of room for some of the younger guys this week because guys are going to miss time. No Horford, no Porzingis tomorrow. Maybe no Jimmy Butler. So an opportunity on a Monday night to see the Celtics at a good price on Game Time. Always going to have the best deals over here regardless of what the game is. And last minute tickets, guys getting scratched, weeknight game. That's a good opportunity to find a deal. So head over there. Right around 7 o'clock tomorrow, right up before Game Time, even a little bit after, you can still find tickets on Game Time. And check out their all-in pricing. You're going to know what you pay up front. You're going to get panoramic views of your seat. Maybe it's an arena or venue you've never been to before. And, of course, they got baseball, hockey, basketball, anything you can think of, concerts and events, too, over there. And Flash Zone deals going on all the time over on the Game Time app. So check it out. See the experience and let them know we sent you over there using the code CLNS, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. What time is it? Game Time. Again, use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Yeah, I still have so much running through my head about this game. Let's circle back to the Peterson stuff later. Actually, I'll ask it real quick here because this is what I feel. Would you have rather seen Shireman? Because we haven't seen him yet. That's the only reason I say that.
No, I'm going to jump in right now. No. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think Joe Mazzulla has in his mind a pecking order of opportunities. And that pecking order has a lot to do with how much time you've invested. That not only do you have to be talented and show growth, but you will have had to have shown it over a certain period of time, show some level of consistency. And I think that's what Drew Peterson was rewarded with, just consistently being ready for the opportunity, not knowing whether it's going to come. More likely than not, it won't come. But when it does come, will you rise to the occasion? Will you be ready? And he was. I think if going forward, I think you may see the Celtics first-round pick see some action unexpectedly. But for now, I think you got to go with the guys who can frankly have been here long enough to where they've earned the right to get out there. And if we're being completely transparent about this, I see a much clearer path to a Celtics player being ill or having an injury that creates an opportunity for Drew than I do for Shireman. If Sam Hauser, got some kind of stomach bug and had to miss a game or two, are you going to go with Drew or are you going to go with Shireman? If Jaylen Brown, if he's, down for, that illness lasts more than just a game, and you've got to fill that spot, are you going to, have Peterson come off your bench or do you want Shireman? I just think that when you start looking at the wing position for the Celtics, if there's a player who's injured or ill, Peterson makes a lot more sense to have on your active roster than Shireman at this point.
Sherrod, I agree 100% with everything you said. Well, one thing I'll add to maybe affirm your point here, I always think about how Jeff Van Gundy was on the Celtics coaching staff as like an advisor last year. And I know he was interested in potentially being a lead assistant, and Joe was just not going to have him jump all the guys that have been with the organization for longer. And I think the Globe reported this before the season started, but I thought that was such an interesting anecdote because obviously Jeff Van Gundy has a lot of experience and, has a whole resume that's much deeper than a lot of the player development guys that have really come up in Boston. But that's the way that he viewed it. And Drew Peterson has been in Maine, all of last season. And it's not just like, oh, you've been here, let's reward you. Everything they do in Maine is exactly the same as what they do in Boston. The coaching staff, the communication. I mean, I've beaten the storyline to the ground because it's, I like going to Maine and asking about the stuff, but I think he actually knows the system a lot better. And he came in, probably didn't have more than a couple of hours of a heads up, if he even had a heads up that he was going to play. But he's familiar with the system, the terminology. A lot of that stuff is still very new to Baylor. And I think Baylor has been honest about that. So down the road, like who has the higher ceiling, that's a different question. But I think in this moment, the fact that he has a year of experience with the organization, even if it's not on our TV screens and, people aren't familiar with him at home, in that sense, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and remember that when they signed, Peterson, they had yet to ink a deal with Sam Hauser. And so you kind of sense that if Sam were to, let's say, have left, Peterson probably would have been on the active roster. They probably would have converted his contract to a normal NBA deal. Because when you look at the things that Sam Hauser did early on in his career that allowed him to be on that active roster, Peterson does a lot of those same things. I don't think he's as good a defender as Sam, and I don't think his lateral quickness and things like that are the same as Sam's. But in terms of shot making, very similar, very, very similar. And so Peterson, I just think he's one of those guys that he's close, but not quite there yet. But he's close enough to where if there's a sickness or illness or injury at that wing position, he's a guy that you feel comfortable with being on your active roster and potentially throwing out there for a few minutes.
Yeah, I know, and I think that showed tonight, the readiness, the fit on both ends of the floor, and his ability to do the things that they want him to do. The shooting hasn't been there in Maine, but it flashed tonight. So, credit to him for being ready for this moment. I do think he helped tonight. I do want to see at some point Shireman, though, just to see what they have in him. But again, that's not the most pressing thing from this one tonight. It was an interesting wrinkle. Two of the regulars I want to get into here, and of course, Tatum the first. I thought Tatum embodied this game for the most part. You mentioned the miss late, Sherrod. He had two great mid-rangers before that kind of staved off the Cavs comeback. This was one of his better mid-range shooting games all year. He had like a baseline finish that was huge at one point in the fourth quarter. So he had some enormous shots, and this is a good three-point shooting game from him too. And this one, he had a block at one point. So he was everywhere, but there were key moments, not the layup inside Sherrod, but especially early. Started 4-12 in the first half. Couldn't beat Garland a couple times when he had that matchup there. And, we were talking about in our group chat there, him just kind of getting stuck behind, looking for foul calls in those spots. So I felt like in the moments where the Celtics struggled in this game, Tatum struggled, but it's tough because he led the moments where they thrived in this game. So I thought it was a kind of a hit and miss game for him, despite obviously a great, stat sheet here in the end.
Well, for a game like this, Tatum has to be almost flawless because there's no Jaylen Brown, there's no Derek White. Drew Holiday could not make a shot. I think he was like 2 for 9. And so Tatum had to be really, really special. And I thought Tatum went away from the one thing, Bobby, that you touched on that was working for him all game long, and that's the mid-range. When he would get that switch and he's guarded by Garland, Tatum did not need to go all the way to the cup. Get to the elbow and just simply shoot over the top of him. Tatum did that repeatedly. And whenever the defense reacted to him getting to the elbow, thinking that he was about to shoot, someone was open in the corner or someone was open cutting to the basket. And so Tatum, I thought when he went to the basket all the way, I thought he took away the one advantage of unpredictability that kept the Cavs defense on their heels all game long.
And you have to do that against the Cavs because they're going to throw a ton of bodies at you.
They are, and they have length, and so they don't even have to necessarily move well to get in your way and cause problems. And I thought Tatum, again, Cleveland is a team that Tatum can just have his way with the mid-range game all day, because when he gets that switch with Garland, there's no way that Garland can guard him on the elbow. And what Tatum was doing early on, I thought, Bobby, that really was effective, was he wasn't wasting time. He wasn't playing with his food. He would get to the spot, raise up, shoot. Not get to the spot, dribble like we see him do often, and then make a decision. And so his ability to react quickly to the mismatch, I thought was great. And beating, Garland off the dribble, I didn't think he did that as well as he would have liked. But when he tried to do that, I thought he was getting away from the things that worked. And sometimes Tatum, I think, has a tendency to do that, where he'll go to what he wants to do as opposed to what's working for him in the moment. The mid-range jump shot was all day when he got that switch with Garland, all day.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think that he had, the thing that hurts with Tatum is a lot of times I feel like he has it, like he's having a good shooting night, and it's just 3 or 4 bad shots that end up tanking his stats. And genuinely, like we've talked about this a lot over the years, but
the one over Merrill was awful.
That's the one I was thinking about too. Yeah. And so, yeah, I feel like that, from a statistical standpoint and also from like a winning standpoint, if he can just eliminate a couple of those shots per game, and every star does it, and everybody that's on a heater does it. But I just think that he does it to an extent where it actually, like, then you look down at the box score and he's actually shooting 45% from the field when it feels like he was on a heater, because then he took a couple heat checks or like some really crazy heat checks. So that's just a regular qualm I have. But I think overall you have to just like how he's controlling the game across all fronts. He had 4 assists in this game. He should have had more. He had some great setups. I love the fact that he, regardless of who it is in the corner, he has just made that play where he just, the drive and kick to the corner 3. It's just such a staple of his game now. And Al missed a big one. Drew Peterson hit one that was cool that he trusted him to still find him, regardless of the fact that he's not somebody that is, he's used to playing with. But overall, this loss was not, I don't think this was, Tatum didn't have a good game. He probably needed to have a monster game and, an even better game for just considering who was out. And that third quarter was that, what we saw and why they even built that lead. I mean, they were up by 12 entering the fourth. Most of that was because of the, Jason Tatum's play, and there just wasn't enough down the stretch there. And it doesn't help that the Cavs star, Donovan Mitchell, was perfect down the stretch.
Let's keep checking the boxes here. White missed this game. That impacts them big time. And, the one thing I do like, I think a silver lining from this game, if White's going to miss some time here, and I did check in on it, doesn't seem like there's a ton of concern, as Mazzulla said, about this injury being a long-term thing, even though you hear foot and you're like, Noah mentioned it Friday. He normally doesn't miss a game, and he was questionable for this one, which is probably a good sign, but they rule him out. They went 3-3 to start last year when he missed games, so they've felt his loss pretty significantly here. And unfortunately for the Celtics, Sherrod, I thought Pritchard filled in decently in that spot, especially later in the game. He started playing some of that 2-man game with Tatum that I think is important to set him up for shots. There was a long pass with Tatum, had a mismatch underneath that was a little too long and led Tatum out of bounds. That was tough. And I felt like Pritchard, he got put in some weird spots in this game, right? He's attacking a mismatch late, posting up. You never see that. And he's doing a lot of Derek White things here that he's just not used to. But, 24 points, solid shooting game, and getting into that 2-man game late. I felt like you were able to acclimate him to that spot. Let's say White misses a week here. He's going to miss 5 games if he misses a week here. So it's going to be some pretty important minutes for Pritchard, where he's already grown so important for this team. So we'll see what ends up happening with Derek here. They're tight at that guard spot. So it's going to put an enormous amount of Pritchard here on Pritchard here if White misses 3, 4, 5 games. But Pritchard looked capable here, especially late.
Well, I thought in this game, Peyton really, I thought, got into his bag and showed that he's more than just end of the shot clock 3-point shooter. I mean, his post-up game is really good for a guy who's not that big. And again, the thing that I like about him was that, he's not tall, obviously, but he's strong. And he uses that low center of gravity to get great position. I mean, seeing him back Garland down was really, really just certainly unexpected. And because he's a point guard, he has the ability to see guys in the corners, because typically when Cleveland collapses defensively on the post, they leave the corner wide open. Tatum just absolutely, to Noah's point earlier, Tatum should have had at least 3 or 4 more assists than he wound up with. By the simple fact that they were able to take advantage of those open corner opportunities that happen when the defense gets sucked in and collapses. Peyton was good. I mean, he scored on a block. He scored from 3-point range. He scored mid-range, obviously from the free throw line. And they needed someone to be a number 2 scorer. They needed that Robin to Tatum's Batman in this game when you didn't have Jalen, you didn't have Derek. You had Drew Holiday struggling with his shot. And Peyton was that. He was that guy. And that's when you're considered one of the best 6 men in the NBA, you're leading all scorers coming off the bench in the NBA. These are the kind of performances that you're supposed to have on nights when your role is enhanced. So Peyton had a great game. I thought he had a really, really good game. And when you look at the factors that contributed to this loss, Peyton's play does not stack high, if at all, as being among them.
Yeah.
They just keep putting more and more on his plate now, and he keeps handling it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's Noah's all-star. Remember, when he becomes an all-star, we are going to credit Noah with calling that before anyone even conjured up the idea.
And I was even more bold on Sherrod's pod yesterday than I am on here talking about Peyton Pritchard.
Went all in on Pritchard.
But I will say, I think this was the kind of game that actually made me feel more encouraged about Pritchard than I already feel, because his shot was off. I mean, he started the game, he made his first, I think, 1 or 2 shots, and then he missed like 8 in a row. And so you're thinking at that moment, like, is this just not his night? Is he just not going to impact this game? It's not going to be every night. He's your 6th man ultimately. It's his first year really putting up these kinds of numbers. Like, it might just not be his night.
6th man.
And then eventually he finishes with 24 points. And in the 4th quarter, I think he was kind of the guy. Like, he was really running the show. He was taking big shots. He was perfect at the free throw line. So yeah, this was one of those games where, you always talk about, I've been feeling this way about like Jared McCain, where I think he's exceeded a lot of people's expectations in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And then the other night he went like 3 for 12 from the field and couldn't hit a 3 and finished with 20 points because he kept getting to the free throw line. And so it's like, if you can find ways to put up numbers when it's not your night, that's what separates, maybe a hot shooter from somebody who's a legit scorer. And I think, Sherrod, like you said, like some of the drives that we're seeing, they're not fluky. They're just the result of him recognizing that guys are not helping on him, and he knows how to go one-on-one against anybody. And maybe eventually people will help, and he's a great passer, so he'll make the pass when he's in that position when he's trapped. I think that's almost his first instinct, is to drive and kick. So yeah, this is one of those games where I just feel, I feel really encouraged about what his ceiling is going to be. Not an all-star this season. He's not in the running for that, but I do think I maintain that that's his ceiling. And nights like tonight, when he has the ball in his hand down the stretch with Jason Tatum on your team and all these guys, like, I really do think that he showcases like what he's capable of.
And I think he'll get a chance to start tomorrow if they're just going to sit everybody. They went all in on this game. Maybe sit Drew, Al, Porzingis, all of those guys tomorrow. And then, who knows who's going to play. Obviously, you'll need Pritchard in a starting role at that point. And, Peterson will get some run again. And
we might see JD.
Maybe even JD.
You never know.
Like, could tomorrow be JD's first real minutes? It's going to be an interesting undermanned effort tomorrow, I think. A lot of guys are going to probably miss that game. And Drew did not look great tonight. We don't really have to get into all of that, but he was questionable for this game and looked like it, especially that was a tough play late against Holiday. But in terms of Pritchard, ton of positives here, because you got him some reps late with the main guys. You got him in that 2-man game with Tatum to free him for some good space and positions and shots late. He even got his own shots late, and obviously they were going to him on that last play of the game. So It's just amazing results here. I'm not going to comment on the All-Star thing, but me and Sherrod basically,
Tell
if
him,
we did
Bobby.
bet it, we're not gamblers here, but if we did bet it, we would be just getting ready to rake in the dough on our Pritchard 6-man prediction.
We called that way before.
And let's give it to Joe Sway too, who wanted to do it but wasn't allowed to.
No, I will not give Joe Sway credit because he didn't have the cojones to do it. You and I pulled.
No, he wasn't allowed to do it. John prevented it. So
sometimes you got to color outside the lines, Joe Sway. That was a color outside the lines.
You could have said someone on the Celtics bench is going to win 6-man. Maybe
exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. No, Pritchard's been great. He's been really good, really good.
One more quick note from this game, and I do want to get big picture on the Cavs a little bit because obviously they split these first 2 games here. Real quick, Noah, thoughts on Hauser? Who some people I don't even know if here it is. I thought he was good in this game in a spot start, and he's slowly digging his way out of that early season slump. He definitely hasn't looked like himself often this year, if at all. And tonight was one of those nights where I feel like you saw a little bit of shades of the old Hauser out there. So that's important because they've missed him, the Hauser they got a year ago.
Yeah, I thought he looked a lot better. And honestly, I think the shot's been off, but for the last month or so, he's looked normal to me as far as his mobility and as far as his defense and rebounding and things. And so, yeah, early in the season, you could tell the back thing was bothering him. And I don't know if he's still doing the hot pad or whatever it is that he was doing on the bench. When we're in person, we can gauge that. And it was definitely a whole contraption going on there, about a month ago. So hopefully he's improving. But yeah, I think the 3-point shot, I know people criticize him. I see people all the time online being like, Hauser sucks this year. I always point back to the same thing. In his entire career, he has never shot below 40% from 3 for a season, college, high school, NBA. And so if he goes through a cold stretch, it's going to even out. It's just, we have every reason to think that. It's different talking about somebody like him than a guy that's unproven that we're trying to figure out what his 3-point shot is like. This is his game. And he has missed some really quintessential looks these past few weeks.
It's tough. When that's your job and you're missing them, yeah, it's tough. We've talked about with so many of the shooters, right? Like a couple shots can determine good game, bad game, and this was obviously a good game with him hitting them. But you do go from, what was it last year, 42 to let's say he finishes this year 35, 36. It's a whole different impact. I know he's bringing some defense and some other stuff to the table, but he does have to hit him at some point, and he's playing through it. He's powering through it. He hasn't even wanted to talk about it when we've talked to him, Noah. So credit to him for not using it as an excuse. But it has been tough because they relied on him a lot in that role last year. And, I do think Dirk's comparison to Grant there is pretty apt. You start getting more pressure, Sherrod. I'm sure that's part of it too. I'm sure guys are accounting for him more too. So you got to find ways to regain that consistency, obviously, but also, impact the game in other ways. Unfortunately, he's doing that through the rebounding, good pass here or there, defense. So we'll see where he ends up this year. Obviously, it's a slow start that's going to be tough to overcome here with the injury. But there have been a lot of nights where it's just that's not the Hauser we saw a year ago. And fortunately tonight, this looked like the Hauser from a year ago.
But you know what, though, Bobby? And you just touched on why I think this has been somewhat of a tougher year than usual for him. He's growing. He's actually growing as an NBA player. And when any player grows, it's never pretty. There's going to be ups and downs with that. Like Hauser came into the league as a guy that can knock down 3-point shots. And other than that, you really didn't have much of an expectation for him. And now he's a guy that can actually do, fake the shot, dribble, drive, pull up mid-range, defend multiple positions, rebound, pass. He's put upon himself this need to be more than just a 3-point shooter because he understands in being around these Celtics players, you can't be a one-trick pony if you're going to have any type of longevity in the NBA. You have to be able to do more than that. There may become a time where he has a rough season like right now where he's not shooting better than 40% from 3-point range. Can he give us something other than that? Does he have value beyond that one shot? And obviously, Bobby, to your point, that's why you're here, because you're a really good shooter. But that is not necessarily going to keep you here. You're going to have to be able to do more than that. And I think Sam is growing into being a more well-rounded player. Now, is he going to be a two-way standout? No. I don't think he'll ever be that. but can he be an adequate defender? Yeah. Can he be a good rebounder at his position? Absolutely. Can he continue to get better as a playmaker, setting up other guys? Well, for sure. His ability to improve in all those other metric areas is what's going to allow him to still get on the floor when he's going through a slump. Because if you're Joe Mazzulla, you know that, and go back to Noah's point, he's too damn good a shooter to stay in a slump for too long. Because to me, the longer he's in a slump, if you're the Celtics, you're encouraged to some extent because once he starts getting a few to go down, that stretch where he's shooting maybe 25-30% is going to be balanced by another stretch where he's going to be shooting 60-70% on threes.
He got everything up over 35 for the season tonight. So
I'm not worried about him. Yeah, I am not worried about him as a shooter. I'm more worried about him just being healthy enough to be out there because I do think that back is going to be something that's going to have to be monitored for the rest of the season.
And you don't like to hear that, right? No. Like it comes up and it's like, ooh, where'd that come from? And then he's like, oh, it happened over the summer and I've just been managing it since. And you're like, what? And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, it's probably just from all these years of basketball. And it's what? So you don't love to hear that. And that's an unexpected twist that hasn't been talked about a ton this year because I don't think it's killed them. Right. But it is something that they've had to overcome. And obviously, I guess getting a guy like Peterson in the mix and having some options there is important because you're down Hauser, Pritchard suddenly all your bench scoring at that point. So they needed a bounce back night from him tonight, and they're gonna need him again tomorrow, Noah.
I just want to remind people though, like this time last year, and Pritchard brought it up post game after Chicago. He literally could not make a shot. Like his first 10
Hauser
games last season,
Pritchard
Pritchard could not make a shot. And I remember Joe Mazzulla saying early on, he has become the kind of player that can still be on the floor and can still impact the game, even if he's not scoring, because he's doing everything else. And I think we're seeing that with Sam Hauser right now. And it's going to be, and in 3 months, it'll be Pritchard that can't make a shot. And then Al Horford's going to go through a stretch where he's over 20 in a row. And then Jason Tatum's going to be, or is the shot broken again? And we're going to have all these discussions. But at the end of the day, like, he has a body of work that I think should make people not worry about him. The same way that in the conference finals, everybody was freaking out about Sam Hauser, came out in the finals and hit more 3-pointers than Luka did. And so, it's going to go up and down. It's the game. It's the name of the game when you're a 3-point shooter. His gravity is going to always make an impact. But I just like how hard he's playing and how he's impacting the game in other ways. And, he's not going to be a perfect defender. He's not going to be, the best rebounder on the floor. But I think he does enough. And even tonight, had he not hit 3 of 6 threes, I think he did a lot of other things tonight that made him valuable. And that will continue to be the case. But he's due for one of these games where he just has like 9 3-pointers. He really is, because he hasn't had any of those games this season. And it's going to come the same way that it did last year.
And that's the difference with this team compared to a lot of teams, Bobby, not to cut you off. But you have guys who have a proven body of work in making big shots and doing a lot of those things that help you win a championship. Whereas a lot of other teams have guys that they think might help them do that they hope might get them there. Whereas the Celtics have guys who've been there, done that, and they've done it at the highest level in some of the most critical moments of a season. And so if you're the Celtics, you're not really freaking out if one of your core guys isn't necessarily shooting the ball particularly well, because you know that they have consistently found a way to impact the game, even when their shots aren't going well. And knowing how good a shooter most of these guys are, they're going to have a stretch where whatever struggles they're going through 8, 9, 10 games, they're going to balance that out with another 8, 9, 10 games where they're playing out of this world.
Want to do a little more Cavs talk out of here. This is funny too. Eric Weiss, good friend of the show. I looked up at one point, Pritchard was shooting 70% of his shots from 3. And Joe's obviously stressed that he's getting into the mid-range and doing some 3-level scoring at this point. So that's another good note on his game here. Hauser good tonight. Shout out to Hauser too for hitting the last second shot to potentially maybe sneak the Celtics into the in-season tournament here, the NBA Cup. That's going to get wrapped up on Tuesday. So we'll talk a little bit about those implications tomorrow. Want to give a shout out to Nutrafol here before we wrap on the Cavs and look ahead to tomorrow. Right now, great time of year. Obviously, Black Friday's passed, but still a great deal over here at Nutrafol. About as good as you'll get from a sponsor here. And with Nutrafol, you get the gift of, a dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1 million people. And that's telling. Thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Thinning hair is different for men and women, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. They have multiple formulas for men and women that are tailor-made to different life stages and lifestyle factors, whether it's stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism. All of those impact both your health and are the key root causes of thinning. So that's what they target with 100% drug-free ingredients over at Nutrafol. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests for final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol men hair growth supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw that. So building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required. And with a Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20%. But either way, right now they're offering $10 off any order over at Nutrafol. That's any order right now. And whether it's a gift for yourself or someone else, the code is Garden Gift. Enjoy free shipping as well when you subscribe. So go to Nutrafol.com, enter the promo code Garden Gift, and get $10 off any order and free shipping when you subscribe. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code Garden Gift, GARDENGIFT. That's Garden Gift at Nutrafol.com. Go check that out right now. So final thoughts on this game and the Cavs in general, because obviously both these teams a quarter of the way through the season, Noah, starting to look like the top two teams in the East. And the more I've looked at the Cavs, I don't think the Celtics are going to lose to anyone in the East. Obviously, like Milwaukee's starting to get back in that picture, and I respect them a lot, especially with Giannis and the way he's playing right now. But I'd look at Cleveland and say this is probably the only team at full strength, full effectiveness, especially if they have home court potentially in a series here, that could beat the Celtics 4 times in a series in the East here. I don't look at anybody else as being able to do that the way they look right now. So I'll give them that. I still say the Celtics are the team to beat in the East, especially considering who they were missing here tonight. But the Cavs can clearly play with them. And what Sherrod said at the top of the show there, Mitchell being able to give you 30 points every night against them is a big swing factor over the other competitors there. I made a Celtics killer list early this year, like all time from my time watching the team. And he's like the headliner, obviously right up there with MJ. So they're tough. They're really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean they're tough and they are hungry, and they've got a coach who has a track record of getting the most out of the talent that he's given to work with, and so
that's a big difference. Yeah,
it's a huge difference. I mean, you go back and look at those Brooklyn Nets teams that Kenny Atkinson coached, and the one thing that you could say about every single one of those teams was they played hard, played really hard, and he got pretty much all you could possibly get and expect out of those teams. And this Cleveland team is no different. But to your point, Bobby, having a guy that you can just pencil in for 30 points every night in a best of 7, there are very few teams that you can say that about. And particularly against a team like the Celtics, who have consistently been among the league's best defensive teams. So to me, the difference in that series is going to be health. Home court advantage, I don't think is really going to be a factor for either team. I think both of those teams can win any other team's building. To me, the biggest factor, and it always comes down to this to some extent, but I think it takes on even greater importance between these two teams because they played twice and both have been missing a key integral parts of who they are. And those missing pieces factored into the other team winning. So health is going to be a big factor for these two, but this was a really good game. I think the Celtics certainly learned a lot about Porzingis and some of the things he can do against Cleveland. I think Cleveland's going to go back and think we might have to rethink how we approach dealing with Porzingis. Does it make sense for us to really try to go at him as much as we try to in this game? Will the Celtics look to stretch the floor a little bit more and have Porzingis play away from the basket more to maybe draw Evan Mobley further away or Jared Allen further away? And then the Jaylen Brown dynamic. Jaylen, that's a guy that will be attacking them and forcing different matchups and things of that nature. And then Mr. Glue guy, Derek White. It seems that almost every game when they're having one of those nights where shots aren't falling, there's Derek White coming with a big three.
So important.
Yeah. So
you see them as a threat to beat the Celtics in a series, Noah?
I think we've talked about this before. I feel similarly to how I felt after the last matchup, in that anything can happen. Obviously, I never look into any series and say this team has no chance or the Celtics are going to run away with this team just because it's competitive NBA teams, but this is not one of the teams that stands out to me as a real threat to Boston. And I would be very surprised if it even went 7. And I would be very surprised.
Who was your preseason team in the East?
I don't want to talk about it.
Was it Philly?
Yeah.
So I looked up Sherrod.
Okay, but I was envisioning like MVP Joel Embiid, Paul George. I don't know what I thought. It looks so bad in hindsight. I was thinking I have a really good track record about Celtics predictions, and I have a really bad track record of league-wide predictions. Like the whole standings, nothing like what I expected.
Yeah, so MVP Embiid has been replaced by MIA Embiid.
I know.
Yeah. I looked up Sherrod. I was writing my notebook over the weekend, and I was like, man, the Wizards stink. They've lost 13 in a row. They have 2 wins. And then I was like, the Sixers have 3 wins. Like, think about that. The Wizards
and they're trying to win games. The Wizards are not. Philly is actually trying to win.
And it's getting to the point in a year. Like I saw it when they started 3-13. It was like 8 teams started 3-13 and made the playoffs. All of them lost in the first round. So you do get to a point where it's pretty indicative of where your season's going. Not that they're going to miss the playoffs or, be a no-show with this year, but they have so much ground to dig themselves out of. And such a big part of their year already was managing that roster, and they have to continue to do that. And injuries keep popping up, and it's like, whoa, we're halfway through the year and we're still not close to, the top 6 there where you don't have to play the play-in. I think they're going to make the play-in. Maybe that sets you up against them round 1, and maybe they're healthy at that point and they can still be a threat. But the thought of them being like the 2 seed or, maybe even like jumping over you in the standings here, it's not going to happen at this point.
No, the ceiling for them is 6. If they can find a way to get to the 6th spot, that will be a success for them at this point. Because, Joel is not going to all of a sudden magically get healthy and play every game for the rest of the way. Same thing with Paul George. Maxey, because they're maxing him out in terms of playing time, his body is starting to wear down a little bit as well. And even the guys that you didn't really bank on doing much this year are dealing with different ailments and injuries, guys like Drummond and so on. So it's just a hot mess in Philly. This is not quite the process that they thought they would be going through right now. So, yeah.
I like that we always get a couple minutes on Philly every show or every couple shows. It's so fascinating. I don't know.
They play tonight.
Even when they play, they don't play. So
they play the Hornets tomorrow in the Cup or Tuesday, whatever. They got a couple of days off here. Maybe they get George back this week.
They got 6 days off.
Yeah,
they've been off all season, so the 6 days won't change anything.
Cup schedule has been really strange, and obviously Celtics have a packed week. 2 back-to-backs this week. Tomorrow it's going to be the Heat. Yes, and all the games through the end of the week now at TD Garden before the Cup starts. Ton of implications there. We'll get into those tomorrow after the Celtics play the Heat here. Jimmy Butler potentially out for this one. Tweaked his knee tonight. He's not a big back-to-back guy anyway. But the interesting thing tonight, obviously down Brown and White, the Celtics went with both Horford and Porzingis. So those 2 are inevitably going to be out tomorrow. That gives you Luke Cornett, Nemesh Keita. Is Brown back from his illness? That would be big. Because if he's not and White's out again, you're talking about like Holiday could be out too, maybe. So it's going to be Pritchard, Hauser, Tatum, and maybe even some main guys trying to lead you through this here. Xavier Tillman will definitely be back in the mix with the 2 bigs out here as well. So the Heat have struggled this year, and it's definitely an opportunity where you could still steal a win with a skeleton crew here. Especially with how ready a lot of these guys have looked, even Drew Peterson here tonight. But this is going to be a challenging one for the Celtics here and a challenging week to get through with, let's say, 4 wins in 5 games here. And obviously you already lost the first of that stretch.
J.D. Davison, that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. That's what the people want to see.
People want to see new stuff, especially on a team that's mostly the same here. So
JD would be a lot of fun. He's been crushing it. So that's another guy where maybe it might come down to not even his fit or anything related to the team, but just if he continues to put up 35 and 12 in the G League as he's been doing, they might just say, let's roll the dice here on him and just give him a chance.
You got to get a look at all of these guys at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if Derek White's thing is going to keep him out this week. If he misses this whole week, that would be a huge bummer. That's it's like a third of Porzingis' time missed in 1 week. That's kind of funny when you think about it, how much hype there was around that injury. And then, a guy can just turn his ankle and miss that same amount. So I hope Derek White can be back soon. I don't think Jaylen Brown's going to miss too much time with illness. I would be surprised. But if you have those two guys out, maybe we continue to see different guys get different looks. Maybe we get a Jaden Springer game. Who knows? I'm going to keep putting it out there. I don't think it's going to happen though. But
I do think they're in good position to sustain through it, though, because tonight, the latest example, Celtics were underdogs for the first time tonight all year and ended up with a 12-point lead based on the way they mixed and matched the rotations and made adjustments. And I thought Joe played out the final stretch there pretty well, too. So, a bit of a disappointing Tatum game late. Missed a couple key shots that maybe could have swung this game the other way. But he held them in it for most of it. He's going to have to do it again tomorrow. Some real Pritchard strides here, too. And I guess the last guy we'll throw some credit here too is Porzingis. Like, speaking of him, Noah, you almost wish he got the ball more in this game. Like, every time he got it against a mismatch, as he does, he's able to pour it in, and he's just looked like himself since he's been back. No drop off. There was even a play in this game where he isolated left side, got all the way to the basket, and got fouled. And then you're like, no limitations. No, I think he said the other day that he's not even feeling the ankle out there, and he's pouring in 20 points a game already. So that's a luxury to have right now, and he'll obviously get the night off tomorrow.
And I do think if we remember back to especially the first half of last season, Porzingis was kind of their cheat code in the clutch. I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if this team has solved their late game problems, but Porzingis has solved them. And a lot of times it would be that they would pass to him and he'd get fouled and he'd make all of his free throws. And that happened a lot of times. And they might want to remember that he's an asset down the stretch. Like, they haven't really played through him. Granted, it's been 3 games, but the last 2 were both close, and I don't think Porzingis was too much of a factor.
It looked like Cassell was getting into Pritchard at one point there too for not finding him on a play.
Oh, you think that's what I was curious what he was talking about?
That's what Drew was, or Scal maybe was insinuating there, and I don't know if that was it, obviously, but that's what they thought.
Yeah. But we'll see. I think eventually they're going to work him into some of the late game touches a little bit more.
Yeah, because he was able to find some really good mismatches, I thought, throughout this game, where he wasn't being guarded by Allen, he wasn't being guarded by Mobley, he was being guarded by guys who were 4 or 5, 6 inches shorter than him, and getting it on that elbow, where he can absolutely just dominate that matchup. And I guess, piggybacking off of Noah's point earlier, it's one of the reasons why I think Cleveland is a competitive team and they will make the Celtics work, but I don't think they can beat them in a best of 7 because I just think that if both teams are fully healthy, the Celtics have too many mismatches that they can turn to. And the ones that they don't have, they can create mismatches with the various lineups that are out there. I just don't think Cleveland can counter all of that change and expect to win 4 out of 7 games.
So, Heat played in Toronto tonight. They are going to come back over the border and play the Celtics. So both teams coming off a back-to-back tomorrow. Butler going to get his knee looked at. Not a big back-to-back player anyway. There's a weird game this week where he didn't shoot the ball or put up any stat for 9 minutes playing in the second half of a back-to-back. So they might rethink playing him in that spot anyway, along with whatever happened to him physically here tonight. Bam, his slow start to the season continues. He shot 5 of 13 tonight in the loss, 20 rebounds and 7 assists, but not able to get a shot off much. And Terry Rozier, old friend Terry Rozier, benched Sherrod this week. He had a decent game tonight with 17. But they're starting Robinson, Hero, and Highsmith right now. And
Scary Terry's going to be in his bag back in Boston. You know that. Yeah,
he obviously missed that whole first-round series last year. So first time seeing Terry in a while. They're going to need him. Celtics going to need their depth too. Holiday, questionable for this one. He played. White missed this game tonight after the injury Friday. Again, I heard there's not a ton of concern about him right now, and that's what Joe Mazzulla has said as well. So we'll see if he's back tomorrow. Horford, Porzingis, we're going to miss this game as they do on back-to-backs here. So Celtics try to pour it out for this one before the second game of the back-to-back here. Got a 12-point lead, but Donovan Mitchell deadly again down the stretch. 20 points in the fourth quarter. Steals this one from them. 115, 111. Thanks to Noa Dalzell. As always, check out her podcast. You got Boston. Won't be many off days for you this week, Noah. So a ton of Garden report for everybody here. Sherrod, thanks as always for joining us. And shout out to our Orange, who scored a ginormous win I was up there. That's why I wasn't on the show Friday. I was making my way up to Q's to see them beat number 7 Miami.
6 or 7. I think they were 6.
6. So 3 ranked wins for Syracuse this year, 9-3 in football, and one of the best offenses in the sport. So they're not going to the playoff, but this is about as good of a season as you can have in college football without going to the playoff, the new playoff there. So great things starting up there. It was awesome being there at the new dome and all that. So that's where I was Friday. Celtics, ton of games this week. We'll have all the coverage from TD Garden. And I think we want to shout out the merch here too. We got a code right now. It's Cyber Monday coming up tomorrow, Jackson here. So we're going to shout out the merch. Jimmy not here to give you the code, but we're going to do it for him. Black Friday 2024. Black Friday continues right through Cyber Monday. That's tomorrow. So all the merch at the CLNS store is available right now for 30% off. That's hard hats. That's phenomenal shirts. I wish it were Cornet shirts. But we haven't gotten that out yet.
Oh, I know you do, Bobby. I know you do.
Everything else available over there. Garden Report shirts as well. I'm sure we'll have one with Noah's face on it coming soon. So stay tuned over there. Always great stuff. Black Friday 2024. It gets you 30% off all merch, including the hard hats. Very popular. Not always in stock, but they are right now at shop.clnsmedia.com. Again, for Noa Dalzell, Sherrod Blakely, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report, and the Celtics, with a loss tonight, fall to 16-4 on the season. Still just a game back of the Cavs. Top the East there. Heat Celtics tip-off time tomorrow is 7:30 over at TD Garden. Check out Game Time if you want to get tickets to it. Use the code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply over there. Check out the Prize Picks app if you want to build a lineup for the basketball game tomorrow, football, Monday Night Football going on as well, and a ton of sports every night over there. So pick 2 or more players, pick more or less than their stat projections. Play $5, get $50 instantly with the code CLNS over there. And right now, Nutrafol doing their whole gift thing right now too for Black Friday / the holidays going on, and you'll get $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping at Nutrafol.com when you use the code Garden Gift. That's all for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. And thanks for tuning in here, everybody. We'll see you after the game tomorrow. Peace.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal!
Porford's out. I think it's an auction.
That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.